Well, hey, folks, Rob Satcham, Feedback Wrench. I am here with a couple that I've known for a long time. I don't know them super well, but we used to go to church together, and they have launched something. They've launched their own kind of nonprofit, and I want to encourage more people to set out and try to build things and do things, whether it's a business, a side hustle, or if you want to become a parent or a nonprofit or whatever that is. So, Jane and Garrett, why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Tell us what you got. I'm up here in Minneapolis. The weather's terrible. You're down in Arizona. The weather sounds like it's good. Why don't you introduce yourselves? Tell us what you got going. What have you guys been building? What have you been doing over the last decade or so since I last talked to you?
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm Jane,
I'm Garrett.
and we are in Arizona, and we are blessed that it's 70 degrees and sunny. We used to live in Minnesota, and God moved us out here about 5 years ago, and we live in Maricopa, Arizona, on a ranch.
A little ranch. Yeah, God's had us on quite a journey. Oftentimes, what we've seen in our own life and what we see in the lives of others is that there's a period of testing, something that feels like a storm, feels like it's insurmountable. You're not going to overcome it, and at that point, you have a decision to make. And we didn't skip that spot. Like we hit that spot hard and went through it for about 2 full years where it was just felt like everything in our world was crashing in. Between work and family and marriage and just everything about it felt like it was imploding. And through that, God's grace and his love led us on the adventure that we're on right now. The adventure of a lifetime. He moved us 1,900 miles across the country from Woodbury, Minnesota, down to Hidden Valley, Arizona, outside of the city of Maricopa, about an hour and 15 minutes south of Phoenix. Yeah, we got horses and chickens and hang out with cowboys and cowgirls all day long, and have an opportunity to really just share the love of Jesus in an area that is feast or famine. So
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
come here and you drive around, you're either a custom home or a double wide.
Interesting. Interesting. So I got a question for you. Now, you guys, okay. So you're down there. You're doing an interesting thing with it. What did you used to do? Like when I met you, you were in like sales, weren't you, Garrett? And I know you guys have been parents. So you got like an 11 and a 9-year old. Is that kind of the case? And what did you do up to this point? Tell us a little bit about your past and your experience there.
Yeah, well, so I work for a software company called Infor. They're headquartered out of New York. I still do that by day.
Mm-hmm.
And then we actually run three companies. We run For the Kingdom Ministries, which is our 501c3 nonprofit, where we are just, it's for the kingdom, right? That's what this life is about.
Yep.
This life is about getting people introduced to Jesus, what a relationship with him has to offer, the peace, the freedom, just the goodness in your life, right? The joy of the Lord is our strength. We also run an organization called Surrendered LLC, where we invest in real estate, do rentals
Oh,
and
cool.
flips now and then. And then we have a leadership company called Rise and Reign. So all of those are what I guess our side hustles to eventually get me out of corporate America and working with my brides. So
Yes.
That's
And we
cool.
homeschool, and we have
yeah,
homeschool too on top of that. So our kids are at home with us. And
12 and 10, soon to be 13 and 11,
yes.
That's
and
cool.
super fun.
Jane, now catch me up. From what I remember, your parents are up here in Minneapolis and stuff, weren't they? Or tell us a little bit of your story.
Yes. So my parents are in Minnesota part of the year, and then they bought a place here in Arizona, which is a gift to have them around. And I ran a company in Minnesota. It was a food-based supplement company, and we were in grocery stores in Minnesota, and it was called Pure Purpose Foods. And it was again a food-based supplement for pre and post workout. And once we moved to Arizona, I came kind of at a crossroads of keeping that running there and opening a brand new facility here to produce the product. but I just heard the Lord saying that that season is done. You need to close that door. I have something else for you to
Wow.
Arizona. And so while it was a very hard decision for me, I felt a lot of peace afterwards of like, I'm no longer supposed to do this. It was hard because you put so much time and sweat and tears into something to build it up. But it actually was the perfect transition to Arizona, not only for me, but for our family, for our marriage. We're very passionate about restoration, not only in marriages, but restoration in homes and land. Like we say, we're in the restoring business because God's the restoration business. And what needed to happen was that door needed to be closed for that period of time to bring restoration to our marriage and to our family so that now we're healthy and whole and now we can truly give what we have received. And so now we're receiving all this from the Lord. We can release it now to other people. So now that we've been restored, we can now bring that into families, into cities, into communities, into homes, because we know that God can take anything. It's never too late. It's never like this is completely broken and useless. God's like, no, I actually see beauty in this. And so he gives us vision for those things to bring that beauty here. So there was a period of time then where we kind of went through that. And then God was like, all right, I'm ready now for you guys to build your nonprofit and build some businesses with me. So that's what we've been walking through now is building out for the Kingdom Ministries for men's and women's retreats here on our property. So the property that we purchased here is for a specific purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to jump in here to just honor Jane and the way that she walks with God, because oftentimes God will ask you to release something that is really, really good and amazing and fruitful in your world so that you can pick up something more fruitful. And so this business, Pure Purpose Foods, was on the cusp of going massive. We were in conversations with Target to go nationwide with all of with her three different flavors of her pre and post workout bites. Like it was right there into being one of these really cool family owned food stories that goes big time. And just the way that she honors God and the way that she walks with him to say, no, I'm going to give this up so that I can take up what you have for me in the next season, because I know you always lead me to better things.
Wow. So what did you have to do to be in position to be able to, like, I'm always a pretty like practical, like, okay, so you got this business going, Garrett, you're working full time. I think some listeners, when they hear this, they're like, I work at my 9 to 5. I have an employee. I don't know how to do this. You guys are like entrepreneurs of entrepreneurs. Like you got all sorts of things spinning that you've created out of nothing. You've left one thing that you created out of nothing to start something else. What are some things that had to be in place for you to actually be able to do that? Because that's not something that most people think they can do.
Yes, it is possible for anyone to do, right? With God, anything's possible. But I did have the benefit, right? God says to get knowledge. You need to get knowledge first in the industry. So you do need to get knowledge in business first. And one thing that I did was I did go and get my master's in business from the Opus School of Business, University of St. Thomas. So I did go through a whole it's a 2 to 4 year program. I did it in 3 years. And that was to get knowledge and experience in the business world. And that's where I took that knowledge and launched my first company. So there are some, fundamentals that you need to have in place that you can implement into any industry though. So once you know the framework and the principles, you could then take it into real estate. You can take it into the fitness industry. Yeah. You can take it into a nonprofit. And so I took those things that I learned in my master's program, and then you can put it into whatever industry you choose. It is possible. That was part of my passion for writing a book. So I wrote Wisdom, Seed in Life and Business, and there are some basic principles in there. And that's also what our heart is with Rise and Reign, is we want to show people and almost give them a fast track, like a mini MBA, a fast track into how to start a business. And so that's what we're working on right now, is we want to help other people do the same thing that we've done, because it is possible, and we know that we can help you do that.
That's cool.
Yeah, the big stuff that you always have to bring, like, what are you passionate about? Who's your target market? and why are you doing it?
Mm-hmm.
If you have those three things, you can get to the how,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can get to the where, you can get to the when, but you need to know the what, the why, and the who. Who are you serving? Who are you providing this product to? Why do you want to do it? What are you passionate about? And as people who love God and love business and love helping people succeed, we understand that everything rises and falls on leadership. If you've ever watched a really good coach lead a team, they just get more stuff out of their players because of their belief in them. Where you've seen it on the other side too, when you see a coach that's just negative and pounding negativity into your team, you can see degradation in talent level. And so we just think there's an overall lack of really good leadership across the board in all industries right now. And to draw some of that out, to raise up leaders to be in the different areas of society, that's our heart, right? That restoration that you heard Jane talk about is our heart. But know the who, know your why, and know what you're going to provide to those people. And you got the starts of a business.
That's cool. That's cool. I got a quick question for you. So I want to talk lots about For the Kingdom Ministries. I want to talk about your other stuff. But just, Jane, if you were to like imagine yourself now going back and talking to yourself when you first started this first business, what are like the main pieces of advice you would provide yourself? Like what tips, what insight, what wisdom would you give her?
Yes. One would be, you can do it. Like mental toughness is important. Like there's nothing that you can't overcome, right? There's even, I would say, like getting over limiting beliefs. Like I don't have the resources to do this. I don't have the finances. So how am I going to be able to do this? So I would tell myself there's nothing that you can't overcome, right? Like nothing's impossible with God. And so he's going to help you jump over an obstacle. He's going to bring in resources for you. He's going to give you strategies how to leverage things. Another thing would be, to enjoy every moment, enjoy the process, because all this, right? It's relational with the Lord, with others, and He wants us to find enjoyment in these things. And so it's important that we kind of are present in the moment as well. And then the last one I would say is, like what God always says to us, like, well done, right? He's always looking at us saying, we don't have to move for like out of this performance mode, if that makes sense. So God really helped me break free of like needing to perform. It's like, no, I'm already well pleased with you. And so now I'm giving you these skills and these gifts to go help other people, but you get to operate out of a place of being like, I am a child of God. I am this. I don't have to do anything to receive those things. I get to now just go release them, if that makes sense. So those are three things that I would have told my younger self.
Yeah. Garrett, would you throw anything on there, or what would you say to Jane back when she was first starting?
Well, so that nothing that I said back then. I would say nothing that I said back then.
Well, hold on. Okay, hold on though. Okay. Tell me about that. Tell me about that.
Oh, well, when she first started this business, I was terrified at how talented she was and that she was going to make more money than me and completely overshadow me. And now I'm like, do it, babe. Like, just go be everything God made you to be. Out of that, man, I was just so self-conscious. I did not have my identity rooted in who God said that I was. I was looking to the world for validation. You're good at your job. You're good at sports. You're a good dad. You're a good husband. And all these things that at the end of the day, the world doesn't get to tell you who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
God tells you who you are. And when you take that and you live out of that, man, it just changes everything. But if I was going to say something to Jane, I would quote a couple really people that are a lot smarter than me. Number one, Jim Baker from Wealth with God says that if God gives you a vision, he will provide you the provision for it. right? Psalm 37:4 says, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart, right? He doesn't say delight yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of his heart. No, he puts desires in your heart to fulfill purpose, right? So know that when you have a vision and you feel passionately about something, God will provide you the resources. On the backside of that, Sean Bowles always says you're just one introduction away from the provision that God has for you, right? At any point in time, any church, any ministry, any nonprofit, any organization, one person with the right tools that you need and the belief in what you're doing can change it all.
That's cool. So now I think I remember now, Garrett, you played football at Concordia, right? From what I remember, was the case, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. And then, okay, so talk to me now, practically speaking. I want to hear a little bit about because I feel like I could ask you 9,000 things here, guys. Jane, so talk to me about how long ago did you actually get started? Can people come do these retreats at For the Kingdom right now? Tell me, like, what is the retreat? What does it practically look like as like a service? If someone's hearing this and like, well, maybe that sounds interesting. What is it as clearly as possible?
Right. Well, we did our first men's retreat. And so I'm going to let Garrett talk about that because that's a yearly event. And we had our first one. So I'm going to let Garrett.
Yeah, so we ran our first men's retreat and we did it here out of our house. So on our property, we have 6 guys come down and they spent the better part of 4 days here. And we were it's a technology-free zone. So you make your last phone call on Thursday night and we lock those babies in a safe. And unless it's an emergency, we always have an emergency number. We are creating space and time for God to interact with us in real and meaningful ways. And we have some pretty cool curriculum that we use from actually the guys over at Wild at Heart. Morgan Snyder wrote a book called Becoming a King. And so I use a ton of that content in this retreat to help just ask the questions and draw out the gold and the vulnerability and the stories out of men, because we weren't meant to do this alone. And so the beauty of the 4 days is that it creates time and space for us to slow down, do less, be a little bit more vulnerable, and invite Jesus to meet us in that place. And we go back with, all sorts of fun stuff to do. And you kind of get smashed by the matrix when you hit the airport. But we pray over all that, right? We invite Jesus into that and we leave different.
That's cool. Okay. So it was 4 days. Yeah. So it's 4 days. This last thing you did. How many people can come with? Is it like, so if I feel like I need to do this, I just call you? Like, fill us in a little bit of the practical logistics too. So if somebody's getting the itch, because already, just technology free, warm weather, just a bunch of dudes out like enjoying. I'm assuming there's some outdoor like stuff going on.
So there was 3 hours every day of just free time. Like, just go do what you want to do. And we have horses and dirt bikes and quads, and we have shooting targets for those of you that are interested in that. It's really fun to just go pew, pew, pew out in the desert. Absolutely. It's right across the street from my house. So you can go hike. There's mountains, there's trails. There's couple 100,000 acres just across the street from our house of Bureau of Land Management land that we can go ride around on. So there's lots of stuff to do, but practically that one happens in January. So it comes around each January. We're in the process of actually building another building on the property so that we can house more people. Because our house is enough to probably house, like, it's probably really comfortable with 8 guys. But once this building's built, that would be able to house probably about another 14. So it'll be a big barn, kind of those barn dominiums that everybody's raging about, where it'll be part living quarters and then part multi-purpose space. And we'll use that in the community for worship nights and, having feasts and having women's retreats and all sorts of hosting Bible studies. But right now, that just happens in January. Once we get the building built, we have a full schedule that is kind of roughly drawn out. That'll happen probably twice a year for men, twice a year for women, and we'll see where it goes from there.
And once we have that up, we'll be putting a calendar on our website so people can find it on there.
Right.
Once the site's built.
Yeah. So I'll hold that off. Never mind.
No, that's cool. Okay, so you got that going. Now talk to me about your other businesses a little bit too. Like I got some curiosity. You said you got a real estate. You guys doing buy and hold rental type of thing, or like help us understand some of these other pursuits you got going too.
There I go.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Surrendered LLC is our real estate investment company. And basically what we're doing is we see needs around the community. Maricopa is about a 60,000 person city, growing very rapidly. There's a lot of opportunity here. And, we're just really trying to be good stewards of the assets that God's given us. And we know that in the spiritual, it's a territory game as well as it is in the natural. So when we have the opportunity to acquire property out by us, it's really equestrian. So everybody's got at least an acre to 5-10 acres. And so there's properties where people from up north, Canada, Montana, Oregon, Idaho will come down and they want to be down here because of the weather that you talked about earlier. They want to ride their horses every single day. And it's rodeo town, right? They're running jackpots every single day at all these different arenas. And so there's opportunity that we've been able to take advantage of is horse properties, rentals, where they come in and they'll rent it out and, they just get to bring their horses down and it's all set up for horses. And
right. And I was just going to say, that's where you identify there is a current need in this area for that. Yeah. People are looking for it and it's not here. They're trying to find a rental property for them and their horses. And so they have pain points, and that's important to identify pain points in who your target market is. What are their pain points? What's keeping them up at night? What's a hassle for them? What's costing them a lot of time and resources? And so then you can take that and you can structure the property so that it's efficient for them. So when they hop on, it's already set up for how they function throughout the day as, barrel racers. And it's just a different culture down here where we live.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. We love it. But so that's kind of I would say the niche that we're looking for is not your typical rental property. Yeah. It's towards people who own horses.
Yeah.
That's cool. I got a question for you. So you guys mentioned like this idea that God is bringing restoration to you as individuals, to you as a married couple, to the communities that you serve, to the people that are going to come down there and everything. I think entrepreneurship and I just say entrepreneurship because I think what you're doing is very entrepreneurial, like hardcore. But talk to me about have there been struggles when it comes to marriage? I know I've been married since 2008. There's all sorts of challenge and change and difficulty. And, there's been times where you go in the bank account, there's no money there. And you just have to trust that God genuinely is like, well, it all comes from you. I'm going to do my part. And let's just keep going. And that's really easy sometimes for one of us to see versus another. What are the different tensions and things that God has taught you? What have been some of the struggles? Be real with us. Help us understand, what does this journey look like? And how do you stay married through it all? How does this look?
Yes. Well, 5 years ago, finance was definitely, a struggle for us and a point of tension. And then I would say that's where we experience God just changing our heart and aligning us to his truth and who he is, him as provider. We manage his money and resources, right? He says in his word that we lack no good thing with him. Yeah. We lack nothing. him. And so he provides it all. And so now we're in charge of stewarding it and managing it well. And so then once we kind of came on that same page, hey, we need to learn how to steward these resources and be wise with them and invest them, use them for multiplication, be generous givers. Like that's something that we found very valuable is every year, Garret had this idea every year, let's sit down, go through our goals together. And then also how much, hey, let's set a goal, how much we want to give away this year. And let's be generous givers, right? Let's decide ahead of time in our heart what we're going to give away. Yeah. And so doing that every year, I would say has helped us just around, finance can be a point of tension. We've definitely walked.
How was it at point of tension? Like, provide me, like, was it more of just deciding what to do with it? Was it did you have different?
No.
Like what?
Had no money. We had no money.
We moved down to Arizona, okay, with one car and $4,000.
Wow.
That's it. Okay. So God took us through this journey of like getting to the bottom of the barrel. We bought a house 2 years prior to moving to Arizona, thinking it was going to be our forever house. Mm-hmm. Took out some of the equity to invest in Jane's business that we ultimately walked away from. And then when we sold it, the market was in a place where we just didn't make that much money. So we moved down here with $4,000, a U-Haul, and one car, and no place to live. Luckily, her grandpa had a place in Scottsdale, a little townhouse where we stayed in one bedroom with twin mattress, king mattress, twin mattress, wall to wall, and 4 dressers stacked on top of each other. And it was awesome. Oh, we had so much fun. But I mean, you could just see like $4,000. We had to sell stuff, like things that we valued, to make ends meet and buy groceries, right? So like, you have to be willing to go all in on whatever it is God's calling you to do. And it's not just finances. That's an easy one to call out. Right now, the biggest point of tension is probably time management. Like, we need to spend time together for our marriage to thrive. That's why we went on a walk this morning. But beyond that, we each need time separate to be with God, to do things that bring us life. For Jane, that's like writing and speaking and doing creative things. For me, it's not doing anything involved with work. Like, I want to ride a horse and rope a cow and build something with my hands. So creating time and space to do that, just, it fills our hearts, soul care, so that we're in that place of overflow and not that place of depletion.
Yes. Cool. And another thing God taught us for relationships is like not, fight what he's doing. Am I being a, godly wife? Am I being loving? Am I responding with grace, no matter what he's doing? Right. Yeah. Like, and I have to ask the Lord, hey, am I doing my part? Am I serving him? Am I building him up? Am I encouraging him? Or, have I been, slacking in that area? And so it's almost like we need to be selfless and sacrificial, and also willing to look at ourselves and stop looking at the other person, if that makes sense. And so keeping our eyes on Jesus and, hey, am I doing my part?
Okay, so somebody listening to that thinks religion's a joke, and here's that, they're like, what a bunch of floofy nonsense. Well, that just sounds insane. Why don't you just suck it up? How did you become, what are some things that went into becoming the type of spouses that are willing to pray, God, where am I not being a godly wife? And what does that look like? Garret, how am I not being a godly husband? Like, how did you get to a point where you'd ask that and, actually listen when your spouse tells you what that is? Like, how did you get to that point?
Me personally, because I have experienced God's undeserved kindness over and over again in my own life, right? Like, I've done things that, the world's eyes are like, that's terrible. That's awful. I can't believe you did that. And it's like, I know what Jesus did on the cross to wipe me completely clean, right? Like now I am in right standing with God because of what Jesus did, not because of what anything I did. And he erases those things from our past so that now we're seated with him in heavenly places. And so because I personally have experienced the depth of God's forgiveness and grace and mercy over myself, I know that undeserved kindness. And so now I can release that, if that makes sense. But I know how far that goes because I know the pit that God pulled me out of. I know what a dark place I was in, and for him to pull me out and now to experience life where I am now, like I know the difference of the two. And so for that, I'm thankful. And so that allows me to then release it because I know how far that goes. Like he saved me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say to those that say, what a bunch of religious nonsense, I would say, listen, if you think it's religious, I agree with you. Religion in and of itself is nonsense. But a relationship with the living God who is wildly crazy in love with you, whether you like him or not, whether you acknowledge him or not, he loves you because he loves you because he loves you, and that's who he is. And I've experienced, because I was in that pit too, and just selfish, addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol, chasing everything I could with regards to work and playing sports as a grown man, trying to get other grown men to tell me I was good because I was good at playing low pitch softball. Like just chasing all the things that the world says, cars, homes, boats, all the stuff that you're supposed to have, and just finding it empty and meaningless. And with a broken marriage and a broken home, and then God going, hey, come here. And one thing that Jane's dad said to us during that whole thing was, Garrett and Jane, you have to realize you're not fighting the other person. They are not your enemy.
Yeah.
Jane is not your enemy. Garrett is not your enemy. The enemy is your enemy, right? Like he's trying to get you guys to fight each other. Be a good finder, even if it's just one thing. Be a good finder.
What does that mean? What do you mean? Tell me more about that. What does that mean? Be a good finder.
So when my dad said that to me, Jane, you're fighting the wrong thing. You're trying to fight, you're fighting your husband. Our battle is not against flesh and blood, right? It's against, the things from the enemy. And so so I said, but this, and he said, you need to remove the but and find one thing that Garrett does really well that you can be thankful for and you can focus on. And for him, it was he's clean. So he would take out the trash and do the dishes. That's just something he's always been. It's a gift. And so I was like, okay, he's clean. He takes out the trash. And I was about to say, but he does this, this, and this. And my dad said, no, you need to remove all the buts and you need to focus on that one thing. And so I did. And I started focusing on and being thankful for. I'm really thankful that my husband cleans and he takes out the trash. And it does. All of a sudden, I know it sounds crazy, but I mean, even psychology, right? Like do psychology 101. It's not crazy because that's how our mind works, but it created a new pathway in my brain to now have this attitude of, I'm thankful, I'm grateful. Now I'm seeing him in a new light, and all those other things are starting to fall away. And then the other thing is you can actually go to war for your husband. Instead of fighting against him, you should be fighting for him. And so there were some strongholds, like he mentioned, addiction. So now I should be going to war for my husband and being like, no, we break those addictions in Jesus' name. They have no place in our family. So then I learned how to war for my husband and for my family instead of against him. And that was a game changer for us. Was like, hey, we need to be warring for each other. We're on the same team. Our family, we're a team, and we need to fight for each other and we need to fight against the enemy. And we know his schemes. You can't be naive of them.
That's good. It's interesting you're bringing up, there was a time in my life where I loved to drink and party, and alcohol was a part of my life for a little bit. And even there was a time where I used to enjoy smoking weed for a little bit. And it's weird when I meet people, I'm 40 years old now, and it's kind of interesting to see how many people have gotten married. They'll be in it for 8, 9, 10, 20 years, and all of a sudden they get divorced. And it's interesting then that you bring up addiction, because I think one thing that folks don't understand is how unhelpful addictions are. How unhelpful even just a little bit of drinking, how unhelpful even whether it's porn, whether it's drinking, smoking, alcohol, marijuana now, people popping out and smoking oneies all the time and just staying a little high all the time. Or even if it's just the release thing, like, hey, I got to go do my thing, and you're addicted to it. It might be your phone or whatever it is. That, the Bible says that our desires are at war with us. It's our desires that cause us to want to sin. And as soon as you allow and put onto the table something, I just think that if you're listening to this, folks, I think alcohol in particular is probably one of the most unhelpful things in life you could possibly have. And then I think the other thing that's interesting so you've obviously, anybody who's been married for a long time, because how long have you guys been married for?
15 years.
15 years.
2008,
years.
Just like you.
Yep. So anybody who's been married for a while, you start to understand kind of these, you've got your love languages. Yes, there's the love bucket. You should be watering and putting deposits into the love jar and doing those things. But the enemy definitely wants you to fight. And the enemy definitely makes you see the shortcomings of your spouse hardcore. Like, it's so easy. And you can easily sit back and shoot like that. So I think it's really cool to hear, if anybody hears what Jane's saying there, that idea that quit bringing before your mind the negative part. Because that's like what you said, it's basic psychology. Even the new age folks now understand, and even psychology tells you there's a pathway in your brain. And you keep running that route, you're going to make a rut in there, and that rut's going to be negative, as opposed to doing the simple things. And then you go read the Proverbs, you're like, wait a minute, this is how God designed us to operate, that we would think about what is good, what is wholesome, what is just, what is fair, what is life-giving. And and I love that whole thing that from out of the heart, Jesus says, comes your actions. Well, what goes into your eyes goes into your head. What goes into your ears goes into your head. What goes into your head goes into your heart. And out from that comes everything. And I think you just described a whole bunch of stuff that I totally agree with. Any other thoughts or things to add on to that?
So just a couple of points. Like, if you want a thriving marriage, okay, and you're a believer in Jesus, you need to stay a Christ-centered couple, which means you need to seek Christ together, not just separately, although you want to do that too.
Yeah.
Okay, but seek together. Number two, you need to be a praying couple. You need to pray together. If you are a Christian family, Christian couple, and you do not pray together, do it. Yeah. You are missing out on one of the biggest blessings on the planet given to you by God. And if you're not a Christian couple, okay, if you're not, that's totally fine. I want you to have a relationship with Jesus because of the joy that it gives you. But you have to find that for yourself. The third one, Christian or not, you need to be a forgiving couple. You have got to learn to apply forgiveness over and over and over and over again. There is no limit. If you want your marriage to thrive, you've got to forgive. We talked about being a good finder. That'd be number 4. And the 5th one is you have to commit to resolving conflict quickly. You have to. So when there's a conflict, you might need space, depending on how you process, give the appropriate amount of space, but then commit to coming back together, talking it through, and coming to a resolution. Again, knowing 1, you have to forgive, and 2, you have to look for the good. If you can do that in every conflict, man, it's going to be a lot smoother. You're going to enjoy each other's company a lot more. It's going to be a lot more playful. You're going to have a lot more sex, like all that stuff that everybody wants in their marriage, the playful, fun, dating enjoyment. That's what's going to come out of that.
Yes.
That's cool. All right. So what are you pushing uphill right now? So you started a ministry. Looks like you guys are trying to build a building. That's no small feat. You're also trying to, what are you trying to bring? Like, what's the vision? What's the 1 year, 5 year, 10-year vision? And then share some of the real barriers that have been coming up that like the real hard stuff. Help us understand, because I like that you guys have vision. You're on a mission. You're aligned to what it sounds like. You're listening to what God's asking you to do. But tell us where you're trying to go, and what have you been hitting your head against as you've been doing it?
Okay, so within a year, we want to have the building built and fully operational so that people can come and stay. And not just retreats, but families, couples, individuals that just want to be in the presence of God, need restoration of some kind, will have an opportunity to just come and stay, be a part of the beauty of God that is here. Like his presence hangs out over this property and it's cool. Okay, so that's 1 year. I would say 5 year, there's a couple properties we have our eyes on to expand this into a full blown like retreat center that you might see if you've been to a Young Life retreat center, to facilitate a little bit larger groups, but more activity and more space to encounter God. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. I would say 10 year, this becomes a retreat center. We move out of the house and into a different place and have this fully dedicated for the kingdom and all the events that happen through the course of a year, and kind of see where God takes us from there. What are we hitting our head against?
Right now, well, for the kingdom, right now we're not hitting, I wouldn't say we're hitting our head, but we're in fundraise mode right now, right? Yeah. So we're gathering in the resources. And the cool part is God's bringing in the team to do it. So that's another huge piece, right? Are those resources? Resources include people and the right team to get these things done. So people to do the cement, plumbing, electrical, construction, the builders for it. And then also just additional like team members to be here to help, with maintenance, with even some of the teachings that we're going to be doing in the building. And so God's bringing people to be on the team as well. And then for the business side of things for Rise and Reign, this is brand new, this Rise and Reign thing, and this is to help people launch businesses, and then also become upright leaders and kind of go to the next level even if they're currently running their business, just to take them to that next level. And for that, right now I would say maybe something we're hitting our head against would be just we're trying to get a new rhythm now. And so like time management is huge. Gosh. And the nice thing is in my workbook, I give some great tips on it. So now we're like implementing those things that God's taught me and how, hey, this is how you can manage your time. Because people ask us a lot, how do you homeschool and do a nonprofit and take your kids to all their activities that they're doing and start a business? How are you doing all these things? And there's a lot of tips that God's given us and we've learned from other people that we've implemented that help us do that. And so now we're just trying to find that new rhythm now with starting a new business, on helping others launch their business and become leaders.
The one thing I would add to that is just making sure that we continue to walk in faith, right? Like God gave us the blueprints to this in March of 2020. And it took another year and a half before we had actually bought the property where this might actually be a possibility. And staying faithful that when he says, Garret, the building's paid for, that you just need to tell people about what I want you to do, and tell people about where you live and the people that are there and the hunger that they have for freedom and joy and a love relationship with the King of Glory. And I'll take care of it. Just walking in that faith, like no matter what anybody tells you, it's hard, right? There's stuff you have to go through to continually walk in it. And it's beautiful because he shows up every single time, no matter what. Every time. He loves to be the hero. So
yeah, I love it. It's kind of fun. My oldest daughter, back when I was in high school, I went to this Camp Forest Springs, which is in Wisconsin. It's a great, fantastic Christian camp. And all of a sudden, my kids go to a private school and Christian private school, and they ended up going there, and I chaperoned, and it was really cool to see where it was in 1995 when I was there to where I was there last year in 2022. And I'm like, man, this thing, it was like 3 times the size. There was
Oh.
so many photos everywhere, but it was cool to go look. They had the book of how it started. And what
Yeah.
it started with was one preacher trying to be faithful to teach kids to do the calling and just be faithful with what he had. And then all of a sudden, some people got around him. Some momentum started to build. More people started coming. I think he was doing like preaching and like some sort of show or something like that. And then all of a sudden he was connected to, and I'm probably not doing the story justice here, but he was connected to somebody that had a campsite and some land. And next thing you know, and you look at this, Camp Forest Springs has this sprawling, amazing camp that has had tens of thousands of people go through. And just what it did for me in the short moment that I got to be there over a weekend was so life-giving. The time that I spent with my daughter, the time that all of our kids spent together, pointing them towards Christ and loving God and loving others and trying to live the right way. And it was so life-giving. So it's cool to think, what you guys are doing, these are the types of things that can blossom into such amazing things when God, he'll just take over. And I know that sounds corny. There's some things I just want to add in here. You've been talking about the peace and the love and the joy and the goodness that God brings. Folks, if you think Christianity is a joke, that's fine. But I think when you look at creation, it's easy to understand there must be a creator. If you saw a painting or a building in an island if we find even just the remnants of some sort of building on Jupiter or on Mars, it's like, oh, there must be intelligent life. And yet here we have obvious evidence that there is an architect, that there's a designer, the DNA within us, the physics around us, reality itself, all of it points to there is a system. We're like an operating system. Ourselves are obviously souls. There's a software. I've heard it said that like truly our spirits are kind of like this digital thing. And what's the difference between your life or your body 1 second after you're dead versus not? There is something that leaves you, this spark of life. That spark of life only comes from life. It would make sense that as you rewind this and follow the parents all the way back, that there's this spark of life. And I don't believe in evolution or I believe that it's just as God said it. And I think if you look at creation, it makes sense that this came from at least a singularity, and if not a mind, because now we know that there's the language of DNA inside of us. DNA is a very precise code. Physics is a very precise code. It would make sense that this is all held together. It's far more complex than a gigantic novel, than the Harry Potter series. It's far more complex than that. And yet we would know that Harry Potter was written by a mind. So it stands to reason. Now, my faith is not in my complete reasoning ability, but I do think that Paul said it. If you look at creation tells the story of exactly what's in that Bible. Those 66 different books are given to us so that we can find our way back to him, and he wants to redeem us, and it's sin that gets in the way. So I just want to add on my little thing there. But the last part that I wanted to add is that you guys keep talking about redemption too. I had some buddies who kind of thought the whole thing was a joke and it was because they were still pursuing the same thing I used to, where it's your lusts, it's your, that car, that athletic thing that you mentioned, Garrett, the whole like my identity is in something, or I just want something, and whatever that is, even if it's not super destructive, it doesn't fulfill you. And when you look at what God tells us, that if we live his way, if we seek first the kingdom of heaven, if we love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and mind, and love our neighbor as ourselves, in that, the whole of the law, he says that he's going to produce the fruits of the Spirit. And the fruits are the things that come to life. And it's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And when you get into that, folks, read that list. Who doesn't want a faithful spouse, a gentle spouse, a loving spouse? Who doesn't? We know right now that all of our rich folks, all of our, whether it's Hollywood or sports, the depression rates are so high because anything outside of loving God with our heart, soul, and mind, loving your neighbor as yourself, seeking first the kingdom of heaven in your life and in the communities around you, it doesn't fulfill. But those fruits are fulfilling. And once you get them, you're like, thank you, God.
That's right.
Thank you. I don't know. Thoughts, reactions, anything else to add and throw on there?
Yeah, no, that's good. Jesus paid it all on the cross for us, right? So that's the new creation. That's the beautiful part. We become a new creation. So like we were co-crucified with the Lord, co-buried and co-resurrected to completely new, right? And so that's where it's like, because of what Jesus did, he kills that. Once you receive that revelation, you're like, oh wow, he already killed that. He killed that for me on the cross. Like he already took it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to receive that. And it brings freedom, right? The truth sets you free. And so when you realize, oh, wait a minute, my past is buried in the grave and it's not supposed to be dug up. Like God says, erase it. I forget your sin. When you ask for forgiveness, it's gone. And so we can't bring it back up. It's gone and it's erased. And so now we're supposed to be moving forward. God's our rear guard defending us from behind, and we're supposed to be moving forward with him. And so that's another thing that has helped us, is just receiving that revelation of the finished work of the cross. He took it for us. He paid it all. And we were nailed on the cross with him, co-buried with him, and co-raised to that, seated with him in heavenly places, all because of what Jesus did. Nothing of ourselves, right? That's where striving goes away. Performance goes away. You don't have to strive or perform for these things. It's a free gift. It's by grace, right? By grace, we're saved. It's through faith, not by ourselves.
Yeah. It adds so much depth to your life, so much purpose to your life. If you're going through your day, what I would say is, if you're going through your day and you don't feel like there's purpose, you feel like you do the same thing every single day. And Rob, you and I know that there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of men that are our age and younger and older that feel that, right? They feel, oh, I get up, I go to work, I come home, I drink a couple beers, I eat dinner, I go to sleep, right? Like, if you feel like you're missing purpose, and just talk to Jesus. That's the Bible says, the joy of the Lord is our strength. And you see people walking around with joy in the midst of all the chaos that our world has going on right now. Like, we get asked that on a weekly basis. What is your deal? Why are you always so happy? Well, his name's Jesus. And he says that 1,000 may fall by my side, 10,000 by my right hand, but I will not be shaken. Right? He prepared good works in advance for you to do. So there's a purpose on your life. There's a facet of the King of Kings that you have to display to the world. And that's the truth of it. Like, whether you love him or not, he loves you and he's crazy about you. And he designed you and made you, and you're here right now on the earth at this point in time for a purpose. And when you move towards that purpose and walk in that purpose, the life and the fruit and the joy that comes with it is unexplainable.
Yeah, I love it. It's my last encouragement is, folks, you're not an animal. We're not animals. I think deep down, if you're listening to this, you're not a monkey. You know that you're not. I find it interesting that no matter what show, there's that Graham Norton or whatever it is. He wrote The Fingerprints of the Gods. You study archaeology, you study history, you study everything. There's this point about so-called 11,000 years ago where everything else that they talk about before that is made up. And I'm a pretty cynical person. Like, I'm pretty, like, I want to see the science. I want to see the physics. I want to know what's going on. Am I a scientist? No. Am I a physics major? No. But I can participate enough to understand. And I find it very compelling to get down to the simple logic of, I think, therefore I am. We are totally different than the animals. And if we're totally different, we're totally set apart, and all things have a beginning, all things have and all life comes from life. Life does not come from non-life. You basically come down to two things. I think that if there is a creator, he would have made a way, or it would have made a way to find him. So when we look around, there is a way to find him. And then you'd say, well, there's lots of different ways to find him. No, there is one that stands the test of time. And then it comes down to Jesus resurrected. Anyways, there's a lot of different angles to the whole thing. But I love what you said. It's through faith that we're saved. Jesus said it's your faith that saves you. And faith in Hebrews, there's a verse there where the writer's trying to tell us, well, what does that mean? Like, what is faith? Well, faith is the confidence in the unseen. But it also says that the faith we need is just twofold. It's two simple things. We need to believe that God exists and that he rewards those who seek him. So the little test of like, if even if things are going all right, I dare you to start seeking him, because the second you seek him, you will find him. And the way you would seek him is start talking to him and dive into the Bible and actually read as though it's written to you. And anyways, obviously the internet's full of noise and everything, but I appreciate you guys. I'm super bullish. So obviously you guys are looking, if people have resources to help you build, if they have money to help donate to bring this new camp, this new retreat together, donate. They go to For the Kingdom, the number 4 the Kingdom Ministries.com, right? forthekingdom.com. If they like the idea of participating and, getting some rest, filling up on God's word, being around a good Christian environment as a retreat, how do they do that? What does that look like?
You can email either Garret at forthekingdom.com or Jane at forthekingdom.com. Or there's a form on our website too that you can fill out if you want more information.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And if you're just interested and you want to just talk to us about our heart and our vision and what this is all about, get into more detail, more than we could do here, we can set up a Zoom call with you too. We're open to do that. We just want to, we're pretty humbled. God uses people. He always has, he always will. And to be a part of that is a pretty cool deal. So we're happy to share if you'd rather do that too.
That's cool. Well, I hope good things happen. Thank you. It's funny. Like Garret and I think we were driving around in a car having lunch like 10 years ago or something like that. And then I had just seen you every once in a while. We stay somewhat connected. And then I saw your book, so I bought that, and I'm working my way through that and saw that you guys are starting things. So I just sent an email or a message on Facebook like, hey, why don't we talk about it? And so we didn't plan this at all. It was more of just like, let's do it. But guys, I'm excited to see you grow. I'm excited to see what God's doing through you. And I genuinely just pray that people will come to him, that they'll be restored, and that everything heads in the right direction. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.